So, let's start with the
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy D-Cal here, hosting E.I.T.H.R podcast number 109. Welcome to those who are new to the podcast. Welcome back to those who are returning to the podcast. It is a What's Your Mile Friday, brought to you by Mile.today. Go ahead and check that out if you want some superhero-esque clothing wear. The E.I.T.H.R is the elephant in the room where we talk about topics and discussions that are difficult for most people to have, normally in their general circle. So, whether you agree with the perspective or not, we tend to look at everything from a devil's advocate angle. So at least you have more of an informed perspective, even if you choose to continue to not agree. You at least see it from a different angle. 916-282-9372 is the phone number where you can call, you can text anything in. You can also text us while we're doing the episode at Spreaker. You can go ahead and download that app, S-P-R-E-A-K-E-R. Search for the E.I.T.H.R and you can chat with me. You can chat with previous episodes of the podcast as well, and anything you want to address, you can reach us that way, or you can reach us through the phone number that I just gave you, 916-282-9372. Or you can also follow us on social media. At Instagram and Twitter is the same thing, E.I.T.H.R, the E.I.T.H.R. You can also follow us on TikTok for the parent company, which is the GNS Inc., THEGNS-INC. Also, go ahead and give us subscription to our very own TV channel. It's growing, GNSETV.com. It's a free subscription, doesn't cost anything. There's a couple of seconds to fill out a profile and you can see what we got going on live right now. We also do shout outs and we do inspirational, motivational to start the podcast off. So what we're going to do is give a shout out to science. And we're going to explain a little bit about that as the episode goes on to science. But I want to give some time to this inspirational, motivational thing that we do here at the E.I.T.H.R podcast. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to listen really, really, really good. Okay? So here's some suggestions. I don't like giving advice, because advice people can always not follow, and you feel a certain type of way if the advice doesn't go the way they expected it to, or if they don't follow the advice that you gave them. So I'm going to give suggestion, and you can choose whether you take it or not. It's completely up to you. Take the risk or lose the chance. Simple as that. Either you're going to take the risk or lose the chance. Sometimes what we do is we ask for these opportunities, or some people would say these prayers, or these questions to be answered, so on and so forth. And a lot of us, man, we don't jump on the opportunity the moment it comes before us. We just don't. So for whatever reason, the opportunity passes people by. So I try to get people to understand, man, is once you see that shot, take it, because you may not get the shot back. And that's when true pain really begins, man. I try to tell people, or, the pain of regret is far more severe than the pain of success. And a lot of us, we tend to choose a known hell instead of an unknown heaven, if that makes any sense, right? So I suggest for people, take the shot. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? Is you basically go right back to where you're currently at. No harm, no foul. But the best case scenario is you actually head in the direction that you thought you could. And the one thing that you figured was going to be impossible to do, you actually wind up realizing the hardest thing to do was just to talk yourself into getting out of your own way. So again, take a chance. Take the shot and miss the chance. Okay? It's as simple as that. You don't miss 100% of the shots you don't take, but you don't make any either. It's the E.I.T.H.R podcast with D-Cal. We're going to get a shot from a sponsor right quick, and then we're going to get right back into this topic that I put. Humans we're almost out of the picture. I'll explain that when I get right back. It's the E.I.T.H.R podcast.
Most t-shirts are simply cool to look at or look in. Well, so are ours. But ours also aim to send a message. They aim to put a name on obstacles that once stood in your way and aren't there anymore. Struggles that you turned into successes and crushed. You made it look easy. Shop at mile.today. Mile.today. www.mile.today. A GNS collection.
This is Henry from New York, and I listen to the E.I.T.H.R podcast with my homie D-Cal.
All right, we're back. The E.I.T.H.R podcast with D-Cal here, the GNS HQ here in Northern California. Again, you can go ahead and reach via text or phone call 916-282-9372. The social medias, we already kind of laid all that stuff out for you guys already. GNSETV.com. All that greatness. So here's what I want to talk about. I want to... this shit is so funny to me. Because of the way my brain works, it's very abstract. It's always constantly thinking 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. But I'm always constantly searching for a deeper meaning. And I said this before on previous episodes. People in my past have always told me that, man, you read too much. And I kind of replied to them, man, you don't read enough. And the sharp people, listen, there's a fine line between seeing a pattern and seeing an undertone message, and some people just being, quote unquote, the true definition of paranoid and off their rocker, right? Well, I came across this article. Before I get to the article, I want to sit back and say, again, previous episodes of the podcast, we talked about the Neuralink company owned by Elon Musk. Well, a couple days ago, I want to say it was Friday. Matter of fact, it was Friday. Friday. This past week, the FDA gave the approval to Neuralink to moving forward with their implant chip that they have been working on for the past years. And to those who don't remember the episode, or to those who are new to the episode or to the E.I.T.H.R podcast, we kind of brought this up a while ago, where Neuralink was working on some chips that they were surgically implanted at the base of your brain. The purpose of this is for those who have an ailment or a loss of a limb or sensory, right? People who are blind, people who lost their sight, people who lost their hearing, paraplegics, quadriplegics. The theory behind these chips was to go in neurologically repair any damage that was made to your nervous system. So you're able to regain your sight, you're able to regain your hearing, you're able to regain your speech. If you are a quadriplegic, meaning all four limbs, both legs, both arms and extremities, you have no function, no control, no sensation. You are to regain those senses. If you're paraplegic, typically paralyzed from the waist down, no feeling, no sensation, no control over your legs or your feet, you're able to regain sense there. So those who couldn't walk can now walk again. Those who are no longer mobile, you're mobile again. Those who were accidents or birth defects and disabilities, these can now be corrected with this chip that they surgically implant. Moving forward, excuse me, from one of the articles that I read, this was also in the works of, am I saying this is part of what they're doing? Well, not part of the approval, but it's part of the plan, was they wanted this chip to be able to also be able to translate and communicate with animals and infants. So when a baby is cooing, they'll be able to translate that coo into what the baby's thinking or attempting to say or attempting to think or intending to mean. So if the baby, I need to go to the bathroom, or I like that color, or that was funny, or that aroused me, that amused me, that I don't like, or I don't like that, keep that away from me. It will be able to translate that to us. Now, the trick with this is, okay, how do we get an infant who's less than 6 months old to comprehend and understand? So that's a step. The other step is, again, with animals, when a dog is barking. Because I read someplace that dogs can comprehend and understand up to 350 different words, where cats can only do like 2 or 3, right? So now we're trying to work on, okay, translate when a dog barks. What does that bark mean? Does it mean I'm hungry, I need to go out, I need to use the bathroom, change my pad, change my potty, my bowl is empty, scratch me, rub me, feed me, love me, play with me? What does it mean? So then we got to get into the logistics of having that animal understand what these things are. Very similar, I would think, to how the gorilla or the chimp or the ape uses sign language. They are theoretically going to be using that technology also to translate these things to data. I can read with them, but I'll be able to communicate with you via thoughts. That can get, that should be scary, right? Because now we're already having an issue with the legalities of ChatGPT, right? Where if ChatGPT creates a piece of art, how do we copyright it? How do we protect it? Can it be copyrighted? Can it be protected? Because it wasn't written by a person, it was written by artificial intelligence. It doesn't fall in the same category of protections of law copyright. So now we get into the situation, potentially, if you have a chip implanted from Neuralink, and you have an adverse thought, you have a bad thought, excuse me, you have an inappropriate thought, you have a thought that would not necessarily be smiled upon by society, and you think it, and somebody's Neuralink chip picks up on that thought, are there now any ramifications for that? Is that kind of an invasion of your privacy, right? Fellas, you see somebody you physically attract, you have one of those guy thoughts about that person. That person also has a Neuralink chip inside their brain. You have a thought. They catch the thought. Do they now have a right to be upset because you are thinking something in your head? Do they now, are you now being out of pocket? Are you now being inappropriate? Are you now being disrespectful because you had a thought in your mind that was now picked up on somebody else's link? Right? Basically, one of the dangers of this Neuralink idea is the thoughts within our own heads can no longer be safe. Think about that. Now, I understand this is probably an extreme to somebody. Somebody's probably thinking, yeah, right, it's not even very serious. Sure it's not, because it's not there yet. We don't have a chip implanted in our head yet. You don't, I don't. I'm pretty sure I will not agree to having it done. Notice I said agree to having it done. But we're going to the side to where eventually people are going to be born, and this is the world that they are going to know. I wouldn't put it past governments to somehow mask the theory. It's immoral, illegal, and just inappropriate to have these things placed in people without consent. I'm confident that governments will have them implanted in people and say it's for the safety and for the sake of national security. It's always that bullshit. There's always that national security bullshit. We can't wait and run the risk of somebody giving us the approval to protect this country because somebody might be planning it. We need to know what they're thinking before they think it. It's one of those narcissistic mindsets. I would see it going in that direction, right? Imagine a world where your baby is born, your baby is taken from you, your baby is placed in the lab inside the incubator. Everything is done like normal temperature cleaning, snipping of certain things, if that's the option of belief. A chip inserted, surgically implanted. Within so much time, your baby's now given to you. There's a scar on the base of their skull, because that's where the chip was. And they're going to say it's for the greater good, so that way you'll be able to communicate with your child. When your child wants something and they cry, you'll know exactly what it means. When your child is fussy, you'll be able to solve the problem without having to guess. On those long road trips, and your child is just irritable and you don't know what it is, and it's driving you crazy and you can't figure it out. This is where the chip comes in to give you that ease of knowing what it is your baby wants. So therefore, there's no more guessing. They are going to sell you shit and call it sugar. And you're going to think, oh, how sweet it is, because of the convenience it's going to bring you. But there's a flip side to that coin. You ain't the only one listening. You ain't the only one paying attention. Who is to say with these chips? Because there are many CPUs. Use your imagination. I understand. Conspiracy theorists. This guy's off his rocket. This guy's crazy. This dude is weird. But ask yourself this question. How much of the government do you trust? I know there are certain people in government who are good-hearted. There are certain people in government who have good intention. But are there good governments collectively? The answer is no. It isn't. Because they're going to make sure they survive no matter what happens. Right? So yes, it is a convenience for everybody to have this chip because again, I don't have to think anything. You can just have a thought and send it. It's like airdropping, but telepathy. So you hear the instrumentals right now in the background, courtesy of GNS Entertainment. Here on the E.I.T.H.R podcast. Imagine having a playlist downloaded in your chip. And the music is in your head. So instead of you having to listen to people blast their music on their bikes with their speakers or walking by with their speakers or with their phone, it's now in their head. And they can crank that volume up as loud as they want to because that shit's internal. But just imagine if you got like an ex who hacked your shit and played DJ and played all the music you hated the most. How can you turn that off? How can you turn that down? That's crazy, right? That's what I would do. I would take my ex and I would play episodes of my podcast so that way all she can do is hear my voice. If I knew how to hack it, I would do it just to be Tom Petty in this bitch, right? I'm sure there's some woman out there who would be Mrs. Petty LaBelle and do the same damn thing. Just something stupid. Just put on Lifetime movies on a loop for your ex-boyfriend since he hates Lifetime movies, right? But these are things that could happen, and it's crazy because this was once theoretical notions from films back in the 80s and 90s that I remember. Hell, I'm sure there were movies too in the 60s and 70s before I was born. Right? How about things like this? Because the idea of robots has been around since the 30s. Right? 30s and 40s, so it's nothing new. It's just the technology finally caught up to where we can now make it happen. And now people are a little bit nervous on how fast it's progressing, particularly with ChatGPT. But the FDA gave Elon Musk the approval. My concern, okay, do it this way. I'm going to start with the bad so I can end it with the good. My concern, again, is who's going to be controlling what information goes in your chip. Will they give you the controls? Is it something that you're going to upload into the cloud and it's going to be automatically manufactured and monitored and controlled by AI? Is it something that you will be able to have access to whenever you want to? How secure is this? Right? What are the safeguards and protections of, again, you have a thought, just a wild creative thought about something. I know there's a lot of people who don't like certain political figures. So what if you have a crazy thought about a political figure? Is that thought now going to be deemed as a threat against national security? You see somebody on the street you don't like. Is that thought now going to be deemed a violation of the law because of the intent behind the idea, even though there was no act carried out about it? That's some shit to think about. That's the direction we're heading right now. And the funny thing about it is, at one point in the world, I was like most people, thinking to myself, that shit's stupid. And ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody thinking about that. Ain't nobody worried about that. Ain't nobody going with that. I too was like that until I sat back and smelt the roses and said to myself, whoa, hold up. This is actually happening. So, the elephant in the room for this particular topic is, do you want to get a chip for the good things? Like I said, you'll be able to keep a lot of stuff internally. You probably won't need to text anybody. You probably won't need to call anybody. You could just have the thought of something, and there it is in your cerebral. So you don't even have to go anywhere, right? It's mind over matter. So you probably will be able to control certain emotions in the body. Fatigue, anger, hunger, thirst. That's my guess. Because all these things are controlled neurologically. I'm wondering if you will be able to self-diet. Because you can regulate certain things. Have you guys ever seen the movie Lucy with Scarlett Johansson? I wonder if this is going to give us the ability to access like 50%, 60%, 80% of our brains, right? I understand that movie was completely, but at the same time, where they get the idea from? Wouldn't that be? That'd be kind of dope though, to have the chip to where, if I want to change my eye color from brown to hazel, if I want to change my eye color from blue to green, that would be kind of dope. It's like a permanent contact lens that you control, right? I wonder, because our hair turns color based on one rumor is stress. So I wonder if you'll be able to go back and redo those follicles and bring youth to those follicles, so that hair regrows back to your original color. That's interesting. That's interesting. Not to mention, they've also are working on the possibility of the human. I think I talked about this a few weeks ago, of living 3 times the 2 times the average age now. The average American is living about 75 years. So now they learned how to potentially have us live up to 150, 160 years. And I remember talking about that on one of my episodes. That'd be dumb crazy, right? 150 years old with a Neuralink chip inside your brain. You're talk about Walking Dead. Like, that's crazy. What say you guys, though? What's your opinion? What's your take on it actually getting the approval from the FDA? Does that mean anything to you? Does this change your perception on society and where we are? Does it change your perception on science and where we are? Does it have any effect on you whatsoever? Or are you kind of like, nah, doesn't bother me? Just out of curiosity. Now, the next thing I want to get into is another elephant in the room. You guys ready for this one? Because this shit's crazy. I saw an article the other day. I didn't get a chance to read it because I got caught up in life. But I'm going to read this to you. You like to hear it? Here you go. Let's go ahead and do this right quick. Breaking news. Lab-grown babies could be a reality as soon as 2028, scientists claim lab-grown babies could be a reality within the next 5 years. Crazy. I'm going to read some of this article. The inconceivable may soon be possible for those who can't conceive. Japanese scientists have claimed they're on the cusp of growing human babies in the lab by incubating eggs and sperm in an artificial womb. You can see this article on the New York Post. Indeed, types from concentrate could be available to mothers in as little as 5 years, according to Professor Katsuhiko. I'm sorry. I'm going to butcher this name, and I apologize to the professor. I mean no disrespect. Katsuhiko Hayashi, a stem cell biology expert at Kyushu University. The Daily Mail has reported. Okay. His team notably used a synthetic surrogacy method to create baby mice from two daddy rodents as proof of concept of the text implications for same-sex parenting. I'll just read a little bit more. Where's the part I want to get to? Scientists have managed to engineer rudimentary human eggs and sperm in a lab, a process known E.I.T.H.R gametogenesis. I chopped that up pretty good, didn't I? They have not been able to create bona fide embryos. In other words, the artificial baby method is still in the embryonic stage. Dr. Hayashi estimated that it would take around half a decade to replicate egg-like cell production in humans, and 10 to 20 years of testing to ensure this artificial reproductive method is safe for use in clinics. One of the concerns is the mutation and errors that might be introduced in a culture dish before using stem cells to make an egg. So obviously there's still some bugs to work out. But they've been able to do it so far on mice. Now, like I said, this is on the New York Post, so if you guys ever have an itch to want to check that out, you can. But the fact of the matter is this, people. Human beings, we're almost on our way the fuck out. in a certain way, right? Because you have the artificial intelligence, which is okay, cool. The ChatGPT, which is obviously taken off, which is fine. All the information is going to be there. Okay, cool. Now, you also have the Neuralink chip, which you implant into the stem of the brain, which can store information, communication, I'm sure some levels of emotional response, so on and so forth. Then you have this possibility of the human being able to live 2 times longer than the average human as of today, which is 70, 75 years of age. So you're looking at about 150, 160 years old. And now they're in the potential of creating human from a petri dish. Y'all can keep fucking around if you want to. but I'm letting you know, in the next 50 years, I don't know if I'm going to be here or not. I don't know if I even want to be here if I am. But in the next 5 decades, there's going to be a world, and I'm going to quote the great Morpheus, where humans are no longer born, grown. That man said that back in 1999. Here we are in 2023. And they say in the next 10 years, possibly 20, that's going to be a thing. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you, and I'm being tongue-in-cheek, facetious, shits and giggles, just for laughs, but 100% serious, all at the same time. The end of mankind. This is going to be X-Men versus the Sentinels. I don't know how else we can explain it. When people sit back and say the end is near, yes, of the world that we know, maybe not necessarily the planet, but the world we know is almost near. For all my Bible thumpers and biblical folk and die-hard religious people, the Bible is a book of metaphor and hypotheticals. It's not literal. 100%. So, when this world ends, it's going to end by everything burning down. Not by the planet catching fire, but our world will be on fire. Because we have to fuck with nature. And I'm being general with this, right? People, this is where the world is going. And I can almost guarantee you, if you do not want to be a part of that world, which you have that right to not be a part of that world, if you choose not to be a part of that world, you have to understand that world is learning how to function without you. Yes, there's going to be different methods that you can possibly do to make a living, have a living, live a good lifestyle, if you want to be a part of that world. My opinion, my take, you better learn how to become detached from some of the things that you are heavily attached to, because you being able to afford to maintain that life is going to become hard pressed. Do you see what I'm saying? It's going to be hard pressed. These major cities are getting highly congested with people. There's been numerous articles from Bill Gates himself saying these places are radically congested and they're overpopulated, and we need to decrease the population by X amount of percent. Listen, the planet is not overpopulated. The country is not overpopulated. The state of California is not overpopulated. What is overpopulated is cities, particular major metropolitan cities are overpopulated. Why? Because they become the hub for a lot of the businesses that people are trying to work for. They become a hub for a lot of these communities people want to live in. They now become a central location for where these corporations want to build their networks. So then people get pushed out to the smaller rural areas. Well, smaller rural usually equals higher crime. Not always, but there's a lot of poor, angry, and desolate folks who kind of live within the concentrated area. Shit's gonna boil over. Okay. So if I were them, and from reading articles from those people who are them, my thing is, if you live in a major metropolitan city and you work from home, relocate. somewhere smaller and quieter, right? Jim Carrey, you probably remember him from movies like Ace Ventura, and Liar Liar, The Number 23, or In Living Color. He once said, if you're not willing to put yourself in an uncomfortable position for at least 1 year to achieve your goal, then the problem is you don't want it as bad, or something of that nature was basically the quote. Why not? If you work from home, move somewhere further away that's cheaper with land. This way you can grow your own food, you have your own space with your children. Killer Mike was a rapper out of Atlanta, and I watched this interview. I believe he was on the Joe Rogan podcast. He and his kids, they know how to hunt. He and his kids, they know how to fish. They know how to do any of the bare necessities to survive outside of today's society. And it made me realize how much I don't know on certain skills to live. So I've noticed one thing about myself, man. I've never taken the difficult route to do what I need to do. I've always taken the only route I've had set for me. And if it was an easier route, I damn sure would have took that route. But that route probably would not have brought me to creating the E.I.T.H.R podcast. I can say, out of some of the things that I have experienced, some of the things that I'm currently experiencing myself, if the world was to come to an end, there's a lot of people who I know, they would not be able to function outside the work that they do have. So all this ties back into, in 5 years, they're going to be able to babies from a petri dish. In the next 10 to 20, those same babies can be placed inside of the human body. Either way it goes, human interaction is going to become on the downslide based on the information that we have available to us right now about what's coming in the future. ChatGPT, Neuralink, artificial embryos. How? Seriously. And again, with the population control theory that's out there, why not get rid of people so you lower that population, less money to have to pay anybody, you bring in an artificial employee, you don't have to pay them anything, and then you train those to maintain the artificial employee, and your job now is to babysit and supervise them. You're almost like a mechanic for the human replacement. And everybody else, you're now going to become in that wave of the poor or impoverished community, homeless community, unhoused community. And there you go. And there you go. I want you guys, when you get the chance, do me a favor. Go outside. Matter of fact, next time you go for a car ride and you drive past an encampment, I want you to take a look at that area. Take pictures of that area, if need be. And on your calendar, just come back 1 year from now and see what that neighborhood looks like. Are there any signs for a new development? Are there any signs for new phases that's going into that area? Are there any growth in the unhoused community? Is there any growth in the littering in that community? Just take a look. the human being, man, it's wild, right? It's so crazy to sit back and look at that. I can't speak for any other country. I can't speak for Ukraine, and that's an interesting. Matter of fact, here I don't even think I've heard anything else about what's going on in Ukraine and Russia and America. No, I haven't. That's interesting. Not saying that anything has stopped over there, but it's interesting. The biggest news over here that I have seen is about the artificial intelligence. That's wild. Huh. Interesting when they control the narrative, what we do and what we don't see anymore. Yeah. But I can't say what goes on in Europe. I can't say what's going on in Japan. I can't say what's going on in Australia or any other continent or any other country. I just know here in America, there's talk of population control, there's talk of artificial intelligence, and there's talk of artificial life. Oh, and reparations. And we had a conversation about that before. Reparations. The only problem I have with reparations is they've done it to the point where the inflation is so bad and it's only going to get so worse. The money you give people, it's going to be bloated. It's not going to have the same power it did when reparations should have been given. That's just my opinion. That's my opinion. I saw this video about how reparations is going to cause even more racism if you give it to, descendants of slaves in the black community, and how the white community is now going to get, like the poor white family is going to now have animosity towards the poor black family that got reparation. And I'm thinking to myself, well, and my man gave an example of, like, in his neighborhood, if any of the black people in his neighborhood, that's what would happen. And my response was, well, if you go to any well-off gated community and you see a black family move in, how welcoming are those neighbors to that family compared to how welcoming they were to the other people who moved in? I'll tell you right now, when I'm out doing, DoorDash delivery, and I'm in a gated community and I'm pulling out the community from dropping off that order, you should see the people looking at me. And it's not one of those, oh, he doesn't live here. Because I've been to places like in Folsom and Empire Ranch where they'll see me, I'll look, they'll wave, they'll nod. It's just no big deal. No big deal. But when you're getting deep into the cuts off in Fair Oaks, those eyes just stare and that mouth frowns like, what are you doing here? It's like, damn, who am I in your head? So Kanye West said it best. For that dough, look how low you would stoop. Doesn't matter if you're in the Benz, it's irrelevant, right? In the song, we all fall down. The reparation, anyone who gets upset at somebody getting a reparation because of things that happened in the past, you were probably part of the problem of why people can't get past anything, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. But those are the main topics that I've been hearing about the most here in the States. Boy, the future that we have it's very interesting. That's all I can say. It's a very interesting world. So anyway, it's your boy D-Cal, man. We're going to be out for the E.I.T.H.R podcast. I appreciate you guys tuning in. We got on social media, E.I.TH.R on Instagram, on Twitter. Follow us on Spreaker, Spreaker. Download that app, fill out a profile, follow your people. You can also get us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, anywhere you know to get your podcast from. GNSETV, subscribe, free subscription. Appreciate that. Trying to build the TV thing up so we can control this own media outlet that we got going on. Shout out to the sponsors of Miles. Shout out to the sponsors GNSE TV, GNS Entertainment, The World Update. It's your boy Decal, the E.I.T.H.R podcast. See y'all later. Have a great Memorial Day. We out.